Okay, so our next lesson is this period of decolonization in Africa and India, where places in Africa and areas around India get their freedom. So as we know, European countries got really interested in colonizing Africa in the late 1800s, with really only Ethiopia maintaining their independence. As time went by, colonization became more and more unpopular because people around the world saw it for what it was: taking over someone's country, taking their natural resources, making them buy things, and generally not giving people freedom. And so after costly world wars in World War I and World War II, as well as this lack of popularity, and it just costs money to run a colony, these mother countries start to give their colonies freedom. As you will see, there are really three different methods for African colonies to gain their freedom. One method is more universal, and it's called Pan-Africanism. If you see pan in front of anything, it means basically everyone. So this is a movement to welcome all Africans into sort of a continental movement, no matter the country they lived in, to free themselves from European control. The second movement is called negritude. Sometimes it's called blackness. And what this is a concept that basically says that African culture gained nothing from European or Western culture. So it's sort of like a reverse social Darwinism in a sense. So as social Darwinists said that Europeans were more advanced, and thus they will teach things to lesser civilizations, in their mind Africans, then in this case Africans are saying, we didn't learn anything from you, and so we are not going to change our culture to become more like you. So it's basically a way of owning their culture and keeping their culture alive. And lastly, and this is similar to what you see in other countries such as India, there's something called the African National Congress Party, which is a multi-country political party, and this is a party that's really old, starting in 1912. At the beginning, it was seen as more of a party for elites, people who were Western educated. However, as time went on, they moved their tactics to use more terror-based tactics in order to appeal to the masses. So over time, they get more and more violent. This is also the party of Nelson Mandela of South Africa. So the first person we're looking at today is Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya. Kenyatta is very popular in Kenya today. He is a former prime minister, he's a former president, and the current president of Kenya today is one of his sons. And so when you look at Jomo Kenyatta, you see someone who's really giving hope to other African nations. Interestingly, the word that will be associated with freedom is a Swahili word called uhuru, and that is the name of his son, who is the current president of Kenya today. Another leader is Kwame Nkrumah, as you see right here in this old version of Time magazine, and he was the person who gave freedom to Gold Coast, what is today called Ghana. Now, one of the things that makes Dr. Kwame Nkrumah different from Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya is that he was more of a fan of African socialism, which doesn't make him a full-born communist. There's just this concept of African communalism that made more sense for him when you think about communism versus capitalism of the Cold War. Can you see what's wrong with this picture? Now, if we remember back to Latin America, once Latin American colonies became free, they weren't instantly successful. One of the challenges for African countries who are now free is that their land is simply worth less, since the mother countries of Europe took a lot of valuable raw materials and natural resources. Now, secondly, when European mother countries were ruling through indirect rule, oftentimes they would get a group of people who were in the minority in that colony and make them all of a sudden the ruling class or the ruling race or tribe. And so there's a lot of instability a lot of strife that will lead to civil wars in many countries. And then as well, there's simply a lot of violence because the European mother countries introduced modern weapons in a lot of these places. One of the biggest examples of violence has to do with Idi Amin of Uganda. They call him the Butcher of Uganda. Now, Idi Amin is absolutely crazy, and it's part of this phenomenon in Africa where you have a dictator who brutalizes his people and is very, very strict and is overthrown by someone who's promising to save the people from the dictator. Well, guess what the savior becomes? The new dictator. Exactly. It is estimated that Idi Amin killed 400,000 Ugandans to try to put himself in greater power. So many people before him, like Stalin, for example, he's using fear to come to power. I mean, just look at his uniform. That just screams dictator, okay? Guess who awards all of these different medals? He does. Now, the Tutsis were the minority, but as I mentioned earlier, they were given priority status because they helped the mother countries rule over the majority peoples, the Hutus. After the Belgians left Rwanda and gave them their freedom, the Hutus, who had been oppressed for decades, will rise up and commit terrible atrocities towards the Tutsis and also other moderate Hutus who don't agree with them. They kill a lot of people in a very short time. The number of how many people were killed is inexact. However, over about a 100-day period, typically we see the numbers of 800,000 to 1 million people were killed. That's in 3 months. A movie called Hotel Rwanda came out, and it's about this guy called Paul Rusesabagina, who was the manager of a hotel during this time period and helped protect many people from violence.
My name is Paul Rusesabagina. I am the house manager of the most luxurious hotel in the capital of Rwanda. A place that my family and I happily called our home until the day everything changed.
Daddy, there are soldiers on the street.
They're killing everyone. It's a massacre.
The United Nations are here now.
We're here as peacekeepers, not as peacemakers.
We've got trouble at the gate.
This is a 4-star hotel, not a refugee camp. I have no means to protect these people.
When a country descended into madness.
They're killing Tutsi children to wipe out the next generation.
No!
And the world turned its back.
How can they not intervene?
Hundreds of thousands are dying.
If people see this, they'll say, oh my God, that's horrible. And then go on eating their dinners.
One man had to make a choice.
All the whites are leaving, even the UN soldiers.
All the superpowers, everything you believe in, Paul. They're not gonna stop the slaughter.
We have been abandoned. There will be no rescue. We can only save ourselves.
Get down, get down!
United Artists presents the true story of a man who fought impossible odds.
I cannot leave these people to die.
To save everyone he could.
They say you led the massacres.
You will tell them the truth.
I will tell them nothing unless you help me.
And created a place
Go inside the hotel.
where hope survived.
You are a good man, Paul.
We need to help one another. That is the only thing that is keeping us alive.
Hotel Rwanda.
Another challenge facing former colonies all over the world, but including Africa, is called neo-colonialism. Neo means new. So as you know, many colonies around the world, including Africa, have been forced to develop only one type of agriculture, one crop. And so by doing this, they have really worn out their nutrients in the soil, and they really haven't diversified their investments, meaning they need money to develop their country, or they need technology to develop their country, and they're given loans by Western countries or international organizations, which is good. However, it now gives these Western countries or international organizations a way to gain control and power in African colonies. There is also incredible political corruption in many African countries. Probably the highest corruption would be in a place like Zimbabwe. And then, as you may have seen the movie Captain Phillips, extreme poverty has led people to turn away from making money or making a living in traditional means and turning to radical solutions, including piracy. Somalia is the big example here. As you can see in this list, many African nations need things such as widespread education, medicine, and then basic services in rural areas, clean water being a good example. If you follow international foundations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is famous for helping African peoples with many challenges such as these. It's a really inspiring story. So now off to India. As you know, Mohandas Gandhi and the Satyagraha movement, civil disobedience or nonviolent resistance, was finally successful in India when they gained their independence in 1947. Here's the Mahatma, which means great soul. Now, Gandhi was more of a social figure. He wasn't a politician. He was never going to be a prime minister or a president. However, his political ally, Jawaharlal Nehru, was, and this is the candidate from the Indian National Congress Party. You can see the two friends and allies right here, Nehru on the left and Gandhi obviously on the right. Nehru is famous for really two things as a politician. He's the first prime minister of India when they became free. And the first thing he does is he invests in technology to make India a world leader. As you still see today, India is a world leader when it comes to technology. Secondly, he starts this non-aligned movement, meaning during the Cold War, when the USA is trying to gain friends and the USSR is trying to gain friends, he refuses to commit to either side, instead sort of marking a third category or a third path. And by doing so, he never gets in anybody's pocket. So India really remains truly independent in the Cold War. If you remember, England warned there would be a religious war if England ever left and India became free. Well, this actually came true, and it's called the Partition, because when India is given their freedom, actually a day before, the country of Pakistan is created. Pakistan grew out of the All-Indian Muslim League, which was the rival political party of the Indian National Congress Party. And so Pakistan was created, and millions of Muslims left India to go to Pakistan. As well, in the newly formed regions of Pakistan, millions of Hindus left Pakistan to come to India. Now you can see right here that Pakistan used to actually have two territories, West Pakistan and East Pakistan. Today, East Pakistan is better known as Bangladesh. This is the leader of the Muslim League and the first Prime Minister of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. As millions of people are moving in two lines in two different directions, not one direction, there is natural fighting that takes place. Skirmishes, little attacks. However, with so many people and such long distances to walk, these attacks really add up over time. And more than 1 million people died on both sides in 1947 and 1948. There's further conflict and controversy in a region called Kashmir in the north, because India claims it, Pakistan claims it, and also China claims it. you can see Kashmir right here. Sadly, this Indian-Pakistani rivalry has continued over the years, involving 2 more physical wars and then loads of more recent terrorist attacks. The most recent of these attacks was in 2008 when Mumbai was attacked and more than 100 people were killed and almost 1,000 people were injured when Mumbai, what used to be called Bombay, hotel came under attack. It has been discovered that the Pakistani government had a part to play in this. And so this is still a very fragile region in the world, especially knowing that both countries, Pakistan and India today, have nuclear weapons. This is Indira Gandhi. She is the daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru. You may remember this, but once Mohandas Gandhi was assassinated, the Nehru family changed their name to Gandhi to honor him. Indira Gandhi, like her father, was the Prime Minister of India in the 1960s and then into the 1970s. She was an advocate for the poor, doing things to help them out, such as giving them low-interest loans, providing low-cost housing. She did things such as introduce ways for the poor to participate in elections very easily. The problem with Indira Gandhi was that she got into some trouble with a religious minority within India called the Sikhs, who wanted their freedom. And so when the Sikhs asked for their freedom, she took a very harsh line to put them down. However, there were some Sikh bodyguards working for her, and they actually assassinated her in 1984. This is Benazir Bhutto, and much like Indira Gandhi, in India, Benazir Bhutto of Pakistan was the daughter of a prime minister. Now, she will become Prime Minister of India herself in the 1980s. However, she's very secular, meaning she's very non-religious. She believes that government and religion should be separate. And as well, she's Western educated. And so she has some pretty powerful enemies, including the military. And so the military will take control of her government and accuse her of corruption, forcing her to resign in the early 1990s. However, in 2008, she's running to become the prime minister again. And she's a very inspiring story. However, in one of her campaign stops, she was assassinated by people with ties to the military. And so just like Indira Gandhi, Benazir Bhutto was a popular female prime minister of Pakistan who was killed for her beliefs. Now to end an inspiring story. This is a young Pakistani girl called Malala Yousafzai. I'm sure you've heard of her. She gained her fame when she was only 11 years old, and she wrote a blog of what it was like to live in Pakistan in a very conservative region that was ruled by the Taliban. The Taliban is a group that we'll study later in a different lesson. And as a woman, she has fewer rights in Pakistan than a man does. And so she became pretty popular around the world. However, the Taliban got a lot of negative press because of her criticisms. And so one day when she was going to school, a Taliban member put a gun to her head and shot her. And miraculously, she survived this attack, and she's become an inspiration to people all over the world for standing up for her rights, for not lashing out in revenge, and really providing a role model for people around the world in overcoming hate and oppression. So on that note, I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.